Hello, everyone. Good morning. How are we all doing today? Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ricari. I work at Microsoft on the HoloLens Experiences team doing community management. We've got a wonderful cast of people that are here to talk to you about developing for HoloLens. You know what? Jeff, why don't you start? I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Jeff Norris, and I lead the operations laboratory of the NASA Jet Propulsion Lab. And I'm the project manager for the on-site application that is the system we're using to control rovers on Mars using HoloLens.
Beautiful. Javier?
First, I'm impressed from the coordinated appearance here. We're all in gray. I feel like 50 Shades of Grey here. So my name is Aviad Almagor. I'm the program manager for the mixed reality project in Trimble.
I'm Mark Griswold. I'm a professor of radiology at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland.
I'm Megan Saunders. I'm a studio manager in our experiences team working on HoloLens for Microsoft. So we have kind of end-to-end small teams that have been looking at what we think some of the early end user experiences could be on HoloLens.
So these four people all have experience developing for HoloLens, something that I'm sure a lot of you may be interested in. So we figured we'd bring them on stage to kind of share those experiences with you. You guys have been very active in communicating with us your questions, and we've been collecting them for a while. But you do have the chance to send your questions to us should you feel. We'll have a few minutes for Q&A at the end. If you want to do so, and I think they'll throw a slide up here soon enough, the number to text your questions in is 99000. Start your text message with the word build. Make sure to do that. And then a space, type your question. They will send it up. Now, in the interest of time, clearly there are a lot of people in this room. We won't be able to get to all of them. But again, we've been collecting and we've been listening, so we've got some kind of frequent questions that have been asked on the Contact Us page on HoloLens.com, which we'll start with. So yeah, 99000, start with build, send away. We'll get to what we can. But Jeff, let's start with you. You were, or excuse me, I should say JPL was the first announced partnered HoloLens developer. Talk us through a little bit of your experience early on. Like, what brought you here today?
Thanks. First, it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you guys. I'm a computer scientist, a developer, and I've been building systems for controlling robots and spacecraft at JPL for about 15 years. What brought us here, really, is that we are passionate about enabling exploration. And we already know a lot about exploration. Everyone knows a lot about exploration because human beings are natural explorers. We have these incredible abilities to understand environments just by being present in those environments. It's difficult then when we try to explore distant environments through traditional devices like a computer screen and mice and keyboards and things like that, because these are really barriers to our understanding. These are things that force our brains to very laboriously form models in our minds of these distant environments on input that we weren't evolved to deal with. So for us, the journey that brings us here is really a journey about exploration and presence. We see this technology as a way for us to allow our scientists and engineers to engage not only their natural abilities as humans, but all of the things that they've learned and been educated on as scientists to more effectively explore places like Mars. And what we're really thrilled about is that this isn't just an idea or a hunch for us, which it has been actually for a long time. It is a reality for us, and we'll be using this in mission operations for the Curiosity Mars rover this summer.
So I know JPL is huge on education and inspiring future scientists, if you will. Talk us through a little bit of what you think HoloLens is going to be able to do for that.
Absolutely. It's something I get really passionate about. So, NASA's responsibility is not just to explore. That's our first responsibility. But it's also to share that journey with everyone. It's a human endeavor, not just an endeavor for a few NASA scientists and engineers. So for us, the potential of what we're doing here doesn't end with the scientists and engineers that are executing our missions, but with everyone. I think all of us are excited about, inspired by, a venture into the unknown. And this allows us to engage with everyone in a way that we really haven't been able to before. We do our best right now to show people the data that comes back from our missions, to talk to people about it, to go out into the world and give presentations about it. But here we have a technology where we can make it possible for people to be there with us, to be there with each other, to see what we're doing, and maybe even to contribute to it in a way that we've just never had before. So for me, it's about enabling what I would say is like the next Apollo moment, the next moment where all of humanity can gather together and share in a moment that's so pivotal, so important that it defines human experience and our progress in exploration.
So of course you mentioned it being new exciting technology, new steps forward. With that have to come certain challenges. Why don't you take us through a couple of the challenges that you faced, whether it's developing for HoloLens, holographic computing, your choice.
Sure. So, like I said, I'm a developer, and so when we were starting out with our early steps with this platform, I don't think it'll surprise any of you guys that it was challenging. The one thing I'll mention that comes to mind is that, my lab had an advantage in that we had been working with VR and AR technologies for many years and had built up some experience. However, the area where we were trying to apply this technology was a bit of a different area, and we had some very new goals in our minds, new ambitions. And I don't mind saying that like a lot of our first instincts were wrong, and that you'll form a picture in your mind about, oh, this is going to be great. This menu or this way of interacting or this way of looking at things is going to be perfect. And then you can sketch it out on a piece of paper. You can write it up and look at it on a computer screen and feel great about it, and then put it into to mixed reality and say, wow, my intuition was wrong. And on one hand, it's discouraging. On the other hand, it's what makes this so exciting for me personally as a developer is just that we have the opportunity here to train our intuition in a completely new medium. And we have to be patient with ourselves while we do that. But I got to say, yeah, some of those first days, those first ideas of like, this is going to, ooh, that's terrible, that was, a learning process that we had to go through.
Does anyone else have any challenges they'd like to share? Megan, you're smiling.
We had to, the UI, designing and developing for the UI was definitely is a complete new, it's a rethink in how we do it. I think we redid our UI a few times. If Forrest, our dev manager's out there, he talked to me about that a lot. He wasn't very happy. But it was also awesome in that we could completely reimagine how we interact with the technology itself. So the accessibility for what you could do by taking your real world and your mixed world, your real world and your digital world, and sort of lying those next to each other just opens up a whole new type of interface and what you can experience, what the user can experience, and it's really freeing. It's a creative process, and so to be able to get back into a space where you can kind of be real, like sort of inventors again, because there just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist now. No one's defined it. There's no rules or things that get in your way for how you might do it. So you get to experiment a lot, and then I think the biggest piece is just learning to sort of fail fast. Pick up, and then we've made a lot of progress too. So we've learned a lot, and we found some really great ways. Just the ability to use your hands, right? Like that's really powerful. So, and it's exciting.
Yeah, so I could add into that as well. I think that this gives you the power to do a completely new type of interaction, not just with your digital world, but among people. And this gets to what Jeff was talking about, that you can, and it's really shown in the Trimble world as well, that you could have multiple people sitting in the same room interacting with the same digital object. And this is, this could be somebody who's with you in the room next to you, or it could be somebody who's remote, like in the on-site demo, but yet it feels like they're next to you. And it's that person-to-person interaction that is why I'm here, because that's the only way you can educate. I don't know how I educate with a person with a blank screen in front of their face. I can't have any idea what they're experiencing. But this is just a very, very natural way to get people to interact with digital things that may not exist yet. But we still, back to the challenge, I still have no idea how to do it the right way. This is a wide open area because You can walk around things. So you know, a 3D UI. I don't know what that looks like. This is wide open.
I think that the user experience is one of the most critical aspects of this technology, and it's a completely new paradigm, completely new way to interact with the world, and that was our main challenge during the development of the solution we presented in the keynote.
Yeah, if I should just add, I mean, I think eventually we'll reach the point where this kind of development will have, you know, widget sets and UI standards and style guides and things like that. It's, you know, none of that exists today, and I think part of the opportunity, you know, for all of you and for us and, you know, the other people who are starting to work in this area is to like plow that ground and find out what is the right idea. And if you look at how other media, when they emerged, imitated the previous media and then ultimately found their own, I feel like that's what we're going to see.
Maybe one more note about this, an example about the user experience challenge. When we were exploring ways to interact, there was one version which had some shadows on the reality. So you have those objects and they cast shadow. But then we did a sun study with our tool. We wanted to check how the sun is, you know, how's the reaction of our building, the design building, in specific hours along the day. And I see this shadow of the UI is moving with everything. And this is, of course, something you will not see in the real life. So you always try to figure out what's the best way to provide the user the way to interact without really mixing what you have there with the real world.
So Aviad, you kind of just alluded to my next question for you. Why don't you explain a little bit about the announcement that happened this week, the work that Trimble is doing with HoloLens, and what you're working on?
Sure. So Trimble is serving industry like geospatial, mining, heavy civil. And for this specific project, we picked the building industry. First, I'm an architect, real architect, not a system architect or this kind of stuff. And we figure out that there is a tremendous ROI for this industry, because the construction industry is, in a way, mixed reality by definition. You're dealing with digital content, design content that the architect, structural engineer, MEP engineer provide, and the construction side. And you need to figure out how to mix them together in order to provide a more efficient process. And actually what we did is we created a proof of concept which follows this process, starting with an architect, doing his design work, checking design iterations, using HoloLens and the holograph in the context of a physical model. So he can actually see the relations between his design and the environment in a much better way. And once he is satisfied with his result, he starts to share, as in the real world, start to share his design with others, remotely or in the office. And everyone can walk around, kind of democratizing the data. I will not dictate you, and I will not decide where you will go and see my model. You can actually go around, look everywhere. It's a fantastic way to analyze and explore and identify issues during the design process. And once this is done, a very challenging aspect of the work today is to transfer this data from the office to the site. And just imagine yourself as a construction worker. It's rainy, it's cold. You need to open those 2D documents and try to understand, where should I put this stuff? Where are these columns supposed to be? But if you can present the data in the context of the real world, there is no need for translation. So it's really a great tool for us to improve the customer's experience.
And Aviad, I'll ask this of you, though anyone can feel free to answer. What was it like the first time you experienced HoloLens? What were your thoughts? What did you think about the possibilities?
Well, we came here, not here, to Redmond, to one of the early HoloLens Academy. And we had a bunch of developers with us. One of them is sitting right there, actually. And in about 2 days, we were able to publish architectural and structural models into HoloLens. And the first time I put the device and I was looking at a structural model of a stadium, it was fascinating. It was a really exciting moment. And I remember when we follow up on the real work, on the proof of concept, and now on the real product we are developing, we took an architect to work with us to really design stuff with HoloLens. We wanted to feel how is it for real architects to work on it and to get their feedback. And I was specifically waiting for the moment when he will first put the device and will experience his own design. And it was really kind of it was a magical moment for him. It was, wow, this is my work, and it's almost physical already. So it was a great feedback.
Anyone else?
Sure. I can tell a little bit of a story that I came as a second wave of people from my university. The first wave came, and they're in the process of planning a new health education campus where we're taking people from medicine, nursing, and dentistry, and social work, and all these different professional fields. And we were building a building that was meant to be to provide the future of our field of medicine for the next 50 or 100 years. And they came and they saw this technology, and they came home and they said, "Mark, you need to go." And I had no idea what I was expecting to see, nothing. But yet, when we put the HoloLens on for the first time, my entire world changed. And I don't, has anybody done the HoloLens Academy here? Was anybody's world not changed by that experience? I'd like to meet you, because this is just, it completely changed how my field is going to go forward. Not just the educational component, but also the professional component. This is going to change every piece of what we do. And I can't think of a technology since an MRI or a CT or an ultrasound 30 years ago that has the potential to change our field that much. When I think forward 30 years from now, where we're going to be, all of us, it's just an amazing place to be.
I have kind of a fun story. So the product that we did is Skype. We started with the notion that you have this amazing technology, and then so important to how do we have that serve people, and especially everyday people. And so we really pushed on how do we deliver something around connecting people and communication. And there's all these social apps and things out there, but they're like kind of these broadcast things, and they're great for the broadcast, but how do we bring people together? And so the first time we actually got just kind of an early prototype call working, and I had the device on, and we had like a little mock-up room of some stuff, and I was walking around, and one of the artists, Paolo, is on our team. I could hear her right here, like she was just standing next to me, and I was pretending to look at magazines and do all this stuff, and I was so blown away with what I understood right in that moment about what we were really going to be able to push forward and do, and that was really exciting. I felt like she was like really there with me. She was commenting on the things I was looking at. She was telling me to go look at something else, and that's when we really aspired to how do we get further into sort of that interaction. And I think one of the things is, as you all think about what you'll create and develop, is we had a lot of people go, I don't know, I don't think communication will be good on this, and I don't, but you can do amazing things that you didn't think were possible. So, I would just like be as imaginative and push forward with as many things as you can. I'm so truly excited to see what other people will get out and create. I know we've only gotten a scratch of the surface in terms of some of the things, and there's people out there with so many great ideas. So it'll be really, really exciting, again, in the next, even 5 years.
So Mark, you mentioned the future, and you talk a lot about the excitement that you have of where your field is going. Did you have any developer experience before working with HoloLens? Or take us through the career before HoloLens.
So yeah, I have a programming background, and what we do in large part in our world is, in my lab in particular, is build MRI machines. So these are everything from applied math and physics on one end through software implementation, actual getting it on the scanner, working with our partners, and then scanning it on patients and clinical trials. We have that whole pathway. And so, I'm not, because I spend that time in all of those other areas, that's definitely time that's taken away from development. I used to be, a few years ago. I could program pretty well. But if I could speak to the experience, so the first time I sat down, I knew Unity at a reasonable level, but I thought I'm going to be the worst case scenario for a developer that's going to be sitting down and programming on this. And so I started my stopwatch from when I first opened up the SDK to the time when I had my first hologram in front of me. It was just a cube, I'll admit, but it was less than 5 minutes. And that, to me, was absolutely not what I expected. I expected, when we came to the first time, I actually brought the math people and the people, I thought we were going to be solving for surfaces and trying to figure out, the triangulations on everything, the hard math, and there was none of that. It was almost drag and drop, start, go. And so within 15 minutes, our whole mindset of our team switched from doing the hard math work that we do in the lab to, my God, this is just content generation at this point. There's going to be some UI development and interface that we have to do, but most of the time that we're going to be spending going forward is just taking data from the MRIs, the CTs, the ultrasounds, the photographic things, and bringing this into the HoloLens environment, just starting with Unity and presenting it in a way that people can understand. That's a totally different problem than what I thought I would be working on at this stage.
So would you say that that's one of your most exciting things about developing for HoloLens? Or if you had to choose something that was most exciting, what would it be?
Well, besides just putting on for the first time, certainly from a development standpoint, that's it. I mean, I am shocked, and the reason that I'm sitting here right now is that reason, that this is so ready to go and so ready to get out into the world in terms of where it's at. All of you who've gone through the Holographic Academy, I was sitting in there yesterday, and I could see the same thing on all of your faces that were there. And if you haven't gone through it, find somebody who has, because these guys at Microsoft have really done a fantastic job at getting this SDK to the point where it's going to be a blast when it gets out into the world.
Megan, what about you? What was most surprising?
I'm sorry. I don't know if there was something, for me, when you think about it, the digital, we've created this digital world, even the fact that we say digital world, with technology. And what I realized, early on was, we're actually breaking the digital world now, and we're bringing the advancement to the real world. And so it's when the internet and all these things sit off in this vapor area here. Where does that actually exist, right? It doesn't feel as real. And so the opportunity to actually bring all of that into sort of the real world in context is just, it's really exciting because it brings us back to a more human state, I think. It allows us, even you can underestimate sometimes, I think, just being heads up and hands free and able to move about your space as you're doing things. And that is something that just personally excites me because, I love technology, but I love technology to serve people. And so I think this to me is at the core of hitting on that. So.
Oh, absolutely. This is for you.
The human coalition.
Yeah, so if you go back and you think about all the things that have come in our digital world since, call it the 80s or whatever, everything that has come through has made our connections to people who are distant much better. But it has absolutely made the connection to the person sitting next to you much worse. We all sit around at dinner and look at our phone, or if I'm lecturing at a university in a setting like this, probably half the students are looking at a laptop and not looking at me. If I'm in a smaller setting, if there are computer screens there, maybe you can get two people sitting at a computer together, but then there's a monitor that separates them. Same thing at work, where all of you guys work, I'm sure. You can maybe have a connection with one or two people, but doing anything more than that with the digital world right now is next to impossible. And I can immediately see that you could get 20 people, almost like at a museum, sitting around a digital object. This is the same thing that we were talking about with an architecture example, or sitting on Mars, or Skype. All of these things that we're talking about actually serve to increase your human interaction. And I can't think of another piece of digital technology that does that person to person like this. That's why I'm here. That's fantastic.
Well, I'm actually rolling back slightly to the question of surprise, about what surprised me. I have two things that came to my mind immediately. The first one, which by far the greatest surprise that I had in the time that we've been working with it, has to be the first time that a person was brought to tears by the experience of standing on Mars. And at the first, I don't mind mentioning, by the way, at the first time that it happened, we were all shocked and a little uncomfortable. Like what do we do? This person is tearing up, they're very emotional. And at first we thought, okay, it just must be this person. Maybe this person is a little, maybe they're a little bit.
I've seen it twice, I'll tell you that. I've seen it happen twice.
It's actually, since then, it's happened around eight or nine times that I've witnessed. And it speaks to something about that I think we're touching. We've crossed some kind of a threshold and accessed a wish fulfillment that many of us, not every one of us, but many of us have, of being in a place, Mars, that in many ways feels inaccessible to us today. And that we're working very hard to make accessible in many different ways, but then to be suddenly just thrust into that, many of them without any warning whatsoever. They showed up and they're like, oh, it's the first demo. Well, here's our first demo, and they're on Mars. And they're just, it was an overwhelming moment for many of them. It was a big surprise the first time it happened. I didn't expect that at all. And it has since become less of a surprise because it's happened several times. And we've had time to reflect on it. The second surprise for me comes back to sort of UI and interaction. And it's just a good example of one of these unexpected things that you'll discover while you're working with the hardware. And it was when we're working on the early days of our UI, and part of our system is that it interfaces with another tool that we use to command the rovers. And sometimes we imagine our users sitting down at a desk when they use it, and they would move their, they're using their mouse and their keyboard on this computer, and we know where that is, and we cut it out of the augmentation so you can see your computer and you can see Mars all around you. And when several of us commented that while we were working and wearing the HoloLens, that we kept trying to move the mouse like off the edge of the monitor. It was just this thing that kept happening to us. We're like, oh, that's ridiculous. I can't do that. You can't possibly move your mouse cursor out onto the surface of Mars. That's not going to work. And then suddenly, a couple of us were like, what if we could do that? What would that be like? And one of the guys on the team, the guy on the Microsoft team, whipped that up in the afternoon, and we did it, and we're like, oh, it's just like a magic moment. It was just like, wow, this really, really works. And I think it's something we're using. I think you guys are using it as well. So I cheated. I had two surprises. Those were my two big ones.
Yeah. So no tears in our industry. We're construction, tough people. But I do share this experience moving the mouse, and actually in the proof of concept you can see this in the movies. The user is moving the mouse from the SketchUp screen, the 3D modeling application screen, into the holographic environment. And a funny story we had, this movie is now on YouTube, and one of the first comments on YouTube was there is a physical model around and then the hologram in the middle. And in the movie, the user is actually putting the mouse on the physical model. So the guy who was watching this on YouTube commented, yeah, they're putting the mouse on the hologram. This is really true, kind of ironically. He didn't understand, he couldn't differentiate between the hologram in the middle and the physical object around it. So great experience, again, from the graphic capability point of view.
So yeah, Jeff kind of mentioned this before, but let's talk about tools and the tools that you use for developing for HoloLens. Are you and your team able to use existing tools and kind of integrate into those, or do you have to learn a whole new skill set? Do you have to do everything from scratch?
Yeah, so it's not from scratch. Our guys are using C# and Unity, and they could use this knowledge when developing for HoloLens. I think, again, and we mentioned it earlier, there is a lot of efforts here on the graphic side. So having an expert, an artist, a dev artist is essential for success. But there is other part of this kind of extending. So there is one part which is about the technical aspect, what skills the developers need. And there is an aspect of our users. And what is really attractive for me in this approach, our customers invest quite a lot of money and time, teaching themselves on the existing tool. CAD tools are pretty complex, and it takes time to be an expert. And what we are doing here with HoloLens, we are not asking them to replace the existing technology. We're actually telling them we have here a technology which can extend your capabilities. So you can still use your existing tool, but you will be able to do much more. You will be able to experience your design in a much better way and share it with others. So for me, it's a great message for the market and for our customers.
That's a core part of the kind of the value proposition for us as well. We have, in the case of the Curiosity rover mission, a huge investment in the tools that operate that spacecraft, and it was not something that we could or desired to just sort of cavalierly toss out. And we didn't have to. We found, and I also mentioned, by the way, that because this is so young, this work area is so new, we haven't figured out everything that it's best for yet. And if we had to suddenly, like from the get-go, do everything, replace completely everything we'd done before, I think it would have been very hard, possibly impossible for us to succeed. So what we could do instead was, these problems are the ones we think that this technology is going to help us most with, and focus on those, and then keep the connection back to the original tool set and continue using it for what it made the most sense for.
So we got a lot of questions for you, Megan. I've got one that came through. Can I design a Surface Hub app and transform it into a HoloLens app?
Yes, you can.
Care to elaborate?
So I'll talk a little bit about Skype. One of the things that we did, I just set this down, sorry. One of the things that we did around the Skype experience is we wanted to make sure that we could connect to anybody. So there's 300 million Skype users out there, and we wanted to make sure that no matter who you wanted to call, you could. And so we actually unlocked the ability to draw holograms from a tablet into a HoloLens, and so you can have interaction from any device through the HoloLens. So even if my mom didn't have a HoloLens, she could actually do a Skype call with me and interact in a really rich and fun way. So, I think if anybody did anyone do the UAP sessions or any of those kinds of things? So really getting involved in investigating kind of the whole UAP model that we've released, because HoloLens is a Windows 10 device. And so we're now looking, and we've got some other projects going. We're actually playing a little bit back and forth where now take actually a HoloLens app that we created on HoloLens and then put that into the tablet. So we have that actually working as well now too. So if you didn't get a chance to see the Skype demo, I think there's some video of it, but Holo Studios, which is on the HoloLens, we now have on the tablet as well. And so really kind of pushing how we can make that easy going back and forth.
So we talked about experiences through HoloLens and through, like, let's say a tablet. How do you share experiences across multiple HoloLens users? And this is for any of you.
Well, we haven't announced what we were going to do on that yet. But,
Don't you get me in trouble, Megan.
So obviously, we're Skype, so we have ability to call another HoloLens user, and we have a pretty cool experience that we'll hopefully be showing in the next coming months around how you can actually interact with other HoloLens users, where you get to sort of share my view, and then I can turn around and see someone else's view. And so when you think about collaboration, and especially like remote workplaces for collaboration, like this becomes really a powerful opportunity to work around that. But it is possible, yes.
I can add here that, again, in the construction industry, it's very common that you will find the architect in London, the structural engineer in Seattle, and the project is in Denver, Colorado. And in this kind of scenario, you must have an efficient collaboration process. And there are some tools to collaborate, and naturally they're all based today on this kind of 2D screen or 3D model behind a 2D screen. And what we experienced in the last few weeks is the ability to collaborate with a hologram. So I can be somewhere in the world, collaborating with someone else. We'll both see the hologram, each one of us from the point of view he is standing, but we will also see the position and the gaze of the other users, which means I know what they're talking about. And this is a fantastic collaboration technology.
And from the beginning, we knew that OnSite, our Mars application, had to support collaboration because mission control, mission operations, is this inherently collaborative task. Our science team is spread around the world, and many of them are, first and foremost, something else. They might be a university professor, or they might be a member of a research lab, and they're participating in this mission in a small slice of their time. And so what we wanted to do, I mean, and it sounds just ridiculous and impossible until we did it, is that we wanted to make it possible for them in that like 15-minute slot that they needed to like contribute to a decision to stand on Mars beside the other members of the team and say, you know, here's what I think, and here's what, wait, come over here and have a look at this from this angle. And we take it for granted how important physical co-presence is in decision making, especially about something physical like architecture or like exploration. And I think about education too, but it shouldn't be overlooked, and that's what we access with that. Now, one thing we haven't yet done with OnSite is make it so that multiple people in the same room can experience Mars together, meaning that if we're actually physically in the same room. And I love, by the way, that I have to like spell that out so carefully. But anyway, if we're in the same room, really, and together, and we want to both see Mars, it's something I think we see a clear path for how we could do that. It was not the case we focused on first because most of our scientists are not in the same room together. But it's something I think we will ultimately do.
So for me, the point I wanted to hit on was to go back to the open challenges there. That to me, it gets back to this user interface to indicate where people are standing or what they're looking at. I think the on-site demo, and it's the same on the video as it is in real life, is great at indicating that. You can see a model, there's a cursor that shows where the person's looking at. You can see their gaze, right, where their head is pointed. But this is relatively simple at this point, I would argue. And I think that this is the next big challenge in the interaction space is how is that going to look when we get further along? How do you control, imagine we have a model in front of, an interactive model in front of a group of people. How do you control who's interacting with it at a given time? How do you move that control back and forth? These are open questions, and again, it's this. I think we're going to start with something that looks very much like a computer today, but I don't imagine it ending there at all.
So why don't you actually tell us a little bit more about using HoloLens in an educational setting? What advantages do you see that it presents over current technology?
Well, as I said earlier, I think that it's the kind of thing that you could bring people together in the same room looking at something digital. I talk about medicine a lot, but to me, actually, the thing that I think about first is actually my son. He's 12 and he's learning about Rome and Greece right now. And you have this problem of, you've got a 12-year-old learning about some people who died 2,000 years ago from little thumbnail pictures in a book. And there's just no way that you can make that exciting. I really, I love my son's social studies teacher and history teachers because of that fact. And yet, with just a very simple set of digital assets, you could bring a centurion here and boom, they're in front of you, or bring a model of Rome here and drop it in front of you. And these are the kinds of things that you just can't do any other way. So we could do it on a computer screen. It's still, you don't see the centurion real size, and you can't walk around them and talk about their armor or whatever. And that's the kind of thing that even if you just had a model of a centurion sitting there, just at the first day of class, I think everybody would immediately connect with that material. And then you can go back to the book and learn from the book and have some sort of context. But otherwise, you just don't have that engagement. And this is almost easy at this point. All you got to do is work out, this problem of getting 20 HoloLenses on at the same time and being able to buy them and being able to.
Oh, we'll get to you, Megan. Don't worry.
Yeah. But all of us want it. Sorry. But that moment, if you do that first day of class or that first day of the chapter, you've completely changed the person's mind, that kid's mind, for the rest of that class. And they will be open to learning that material in a way that is just not possible today. And you could do it in history, you can do it in medicine, you can do it in computer science, you can do it anywhere. And that I don't know how else to do that. That's the revolution I see.
I would like to add a note about the education process. Actually, architects also educate themselves on what they're doing all the time during the design process. And some unique feature in this technology, which is really appealing also in the educational field, I believe, is the ability to move between this kind of line, reality to virtuality. So when you're in a class, you don't want to immerse yourself completely in a typical scenario. You don't want a VR experience, a completely virtual world. You need to see the teacher, you need to see the other people around you, and actually you're going to do it in kind of a mixed reality environment. But in some cases, back to the architectural practice, I would like to immerse myself in the design. I would like to understand how people in the street will experience my building. And this is a great way to be able to actually move along this line from virtuality to the real world and decide where I want to be along this line when I'm making decisions.
So, Aviad, what type of challenges does that give you when it comes to designing UI in augmented reality?
Yeah, that's again brings the question how to provide the control to our users in kind of a easy way. I mean, how not to add too much UI which will interfere between him and the real environment. On the other hand, how to provide the flexibility to control what he's doing. And we're exploring multiple ways to do it, including putting the UI in front of the user, putting the UI in specific locations in the environment, even using some accessories to control the environment. So all this is optional, and you guys should decide what is best in your specific project.
Just commenting on UI, and it's already been a refrain in this talk. Unsurprisingly, I mean, this is very focused on the user experience. It's a big part of where the new ground has been broken here. So with OnSite, we went through a lot of revisions early on about trying to figure out like how do you blend the need to have controls and the need to also have as unobstructed of a experience of being on Mars as possible. One thing, just getting specific on a couple of things that we learned, like one, I don't mind mentioning that I had the initial idea of like, maybe I want some of this UI kind of like a heads-up display, sort of like focused in my field of view, but sort of like up, kind of moving with my head as if it were on a pane of glass right in front of my face. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. Our experience has been that isn't, at least from my experience, the best way to do it. And we've instead moved the UI elements out into the world, out into the virtual world, and they are, you interact with them not as if they were entirely physical objects, because they behave in ways that are a little bit more free than a normal physical object. And use cascading and things like that. But that made it much more rooted in the environment. It kept us and our users in that Martian environment while they were interacting with some of these UI controls. And then we went through a lot of revisions about, things like, should it cast shadows on Mars? There are pluses and minuses to that. If it casts a shadow, it could obscure something, but shadows make this object feel more rooted and more something like I can interact with it naturally. So these are just a sampling, really, of some of the things we've learned. I look forward to actually sharing more of what we've learned with all of you, and then, goodness gracious, I hope getting some help from you guys about things you're learning too.
So people haven't got a chance to, well, I mean, I guess if you've been through Academy, you can start learning. But Megan, how would you say, since people cannot buy a HoloLens today, how do they get started? What can these people do to get ready?
Okay, so first I will tell you, it is the #1 question I get from my daughter every day. So like, Mom, is it available? When can I get it? Can I get one or you bring one home? And then how much is it gonna be, Mom? She texts me this too, so she's very, very precocious and excited. So we are, the best way to stay on top of the latest information that we're gonna share is to make sure you're part of the Windows Insider program. And you can obviously always go to www.microsofthololens.com as well. And we're not sharing a lot of that information just yet, but there will be more information coming out in sort of the next period of time. So
Set the soon. Since you're on the soon train, do you want to talk about SDK availability? So again, Windows Insider program will be where we'll be announcing information related to that. And we know that everybody is really excited and anxious to get it. We are excited and anxious to share that. And Windows Insider program will be the best place to get the first availability and information of that outside of anywhere else.
On the topic of like how to be prepared for developing for this, I think the skill set that I feel overlaps well with this, and of course, we've said many times that this is new, this is different, there isn't an exact match in skill set, but mobile 3D application development is a place where if you have skills in that area, you're going to, I think, get some real transferal of skills. If you don't, a place where you might want to do some experimentation, and by the way, it's a fun area too, I think you'd enjoy it. That, I think, it will introduce you to the thinking about space in a slightly different way and thinking about interaction in a slightly different way.
Can I add to, we haven't really touched on the audio part of the experience. I think the three-dimensional audio response of the device is one of the key things that makes it seem real. And so for those of you who work in the audio space, that's something that will be immensely valuable here. Also the voice commands, I think that's a key part of the user experience. This is another shocking thing. I've had some students working on the SDK and they tried to break it. I can announce this. We have our universal holographic command is do the thing, because you can look at something that's supposed to do something, and if you don't want to air tap, you can just say do the thing, and then that takes care of it for you. Because it knows what you're looking at. But we've done crazy commands like Pikachu and things like this, and they all work. And so that kind of thinking, as Megan said earlier, you've got your hands free. And there's going to be times when, imagine a surgeon has this thing on and they're Skyping to the person in another continent who's giving them the advice. That's all going to happen through voice, and the 3D audio so that you stay in touch with your environment is going to be key. So that's something that I think would be valuable.
Yeah, I think audio, also looking at technical artists, we have a mix of people from sort of like traditional kind of engineering and game engineering, and I kind of learned over time that was like a really good blend of people, and so you'd have a lot of good skill transfer kind of going back and forth as people helped each other, learn, different things in different areas. And so I think, kind of looking in sort of some of those disciplines and fields and figuring out how you kind of mix those, that was something we definitely figured out over time. That was a good recipe. I was just going to add, on the UI, it's funny because what's really cool about what we can do is that you can break apart the UI. You can make it in pieces, and you can put this thing here, and there's a lot of flexibility to it. So whatever the experience is that you need to deliver, whatever the user really needs to do, there is a tremendous amount of ways that you can actually solve that problem, which also makes it hard because you have a lot of ways you could go to solve it and then mixing it. But the ability to use your voice and to then hear where something might be. So even if at one point we'd put a menu over there, and then you turn around and you're like, wait, where did I put the menu? Right? And then, but if you actually, with the spatial audio, you can hear where a hologram is over here. And then you can also use voice to just call it back to you. And so there's a lot of great things around that, or even just with gesture. And I could say, well, I want this small, or maybe I want it bigger, or maybe I just want to put it over here. So you're actually giving the user the flexibility to sort of organize the way that will make the most sense for them. And so I think that was something that we really learned. We definitely wanted to ensure that people who were still participating in the real world, and so they could do that and not have a bunch of stuff all in their face and getting in the way, because they're really trying to achieve something here right now. And then again, all these things are just about helping them get that thing sort of done, whether it's having a great conversation or doing surgery or
I just will quickly add to that I think that's the key thing that Darren Bennett showed at the keynote, was that you can take that information that you want and put it where you want it. And it's so absolutely natural to be able to have your email over here or your Skype over here and have it where you want it. We don't do that today. We have a monitor, we have a phone, or we have a watch, and it's always has to be everything. And that ability is going to be fantastic to see where it goes.
So you talk about different rooms and different use cases. How do you test for all the different variables that are out there? Are there any tools that are built in that allow you to do that? Right back to Megan.
Yeah, I get all the hard ones. It's good. Actually, this is a good. So a lot of the so we do a lot of testing. One of the things with our designers is we'd come up with like 100 scenarios, and then we actually had them set up sort of mini stations and go around and try to do all those. So we'd say, yes, we could defuse a bomb. And at one point we had like a little bomb simulation, and like, could we do it? And this is where it's also interesting, right? Because now we're actually testing the technology in the real world, because we can just apply it right there and see, how it's working. And so drawing, we teach you to draw. Yes, we can teach you to draw. And so we're just able to go through very, very quickly and kind of iterate on things that were working, and then learn what was happening with the tools that we were creating very quickly as well. So we could go back in and go, oh, wait, this line doesn't actually work here on this surface, and maybe this is something different. We need to go back and think about how do we tool that. Well, when we put the arrow this way, it doesn't actually line up, so then we'd go back and we could kind of, retool that. But we spent a lot of time in scenario testing because we could.
So on the topic of testing for different environments, we're now moving into the phase where we're sort of starting beta testing of the system with our scientists. And that means learning about the environments that they're going to use it in. It's sort of like the science fiction part of our brain, probably imagines like, oh, it's going to be like this vast empty room with like a yellow grid on black floor or something like that. I mean, that's not how they work. That's not what their work environments look like. I mean, they're in offices or they're in cubicles, and they've got stuff all over their desk, and they've got a cord across the floor and things like that. And we didn't want, when we set on this project, we didn't want to build a system that they had to go to. We didn't want them to have to like, oh, well, that's in in building 920, and I got to walk down the street and get in my car and drive to that building if I want this experience. We wanted it right where they were. So what we're dealing with now is like, okay, well, how do we support the the diversity of the work environments that they have? If you recall, part of our on-site application is that it knows where their computer is. It cuts out their computer from the Martian environment. We've had to come up with ways to address the fact that turns out most people's offices are slightly smaller than the planet Mars. So we had to figure out like how could they move on Mars, not only naturally within the floor space of their office, but then beyond the walls of their office. And that's taken a lot of learning. We go out, we try things, and discover that, wow, you should have seen this guy's office. It was, so we got to think about that. We got to think about what his office is going to be like when he's using it. So we're learning that right now, right as we speak.
I have to ask, just for selfish reasons, the response to on-site has been ridiculously positive. I think people are excited about it. Is that an experience that's going to become publicly available?
So NASA's focus has always been to explore and to share. And for me personally, and for my team, we have every intention of finding a way to share this experience with everyone. I would almost just feel, irresponsible not to. And so Where we are right now is that we don't have the specifics planned. We don't have any any announcements to make. But there is just a fiery passion within my team to see that happen. And so I really hope to be able to say something about that in the future.
Awesome. Aviad, yeah, well, give it up, right? So Jeff touched on scale and talking about Mars in an office space. How important is working with scale with what you do, with your experience?
Yeah, so for architecture, scale is almost about everything. I need to understand how my design is related to the environment. It might be a cityscape or interior design. In any case, I must be aware to the scale of my design and compare it to what is around me. And HoloLens is doing a great job in this, again, bringing the data into the real world. And the ability to compare and to see how I can interact with the design is a great experience. There is one slight disadvantage of the technology, I must say. And in the early days, we met with one of the most influential architects in the world today, and I cannot specify names. But after he saw the demo, he was looking at it, and I was a bit concerned already about what he's going to say. And the first question he asked is, can I touch it? And unfortunately, not at this point. And I'm really waiting for the day where I can actually touch it, move it, squeeze it, tear it to pieces, and that would be a great way to experience design.
And then this is for all of you, since we only have a few minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to wrap up with, anything that you'd like to say that you feel the room should know? I'll leave it up to each of you. And you're stumped now.
We've talked a lot. No, I would just say, to me, this is a paradigm shift. It's a hard journey in many cases. Like pushing against something can be really tough. Like you get a breakthrough and it's like, oh my God, the most amazing euphoria, and then you run into problems and that sticking with that. The opportunity I think we all have where this takes us is just enormous, and it's enormous for all kinds of people, for businesses, for users, for my daughter. I see so much opportunity, whether it's how she wants to play in different ways or learn in new ways, because she can now understand complex systems because she just experiences them. And so it's just been great to have everybody's really positive response. And so maybe my last comment, which was a lot of words before that, is just thank you.
Yeah, I've got to say thanks also to the Microsoft folks who have put this together, because I think it's we are standing at a rare moment where things are going to change based on this technology, and there's very few of those things that you can get close to in someone's life. And I feel just incredibly fortunate to be a part of this. And I really, as I said on Wednesday, I can't wait to see what you guys are going to do with this, because it's a relatively small team compared to the rest of the world that has developed this. And I just can't wait to see where we go from here.
For me, the toughest task now is to manage customer expectations. I mean, after the demo and the proof of concept, we got so many requests to participate and to start working with the device. And I really encourage all of you to start explore. It's an amazing technology.
Well, I'll shamelessly mention that we're looking to hire a technical artist, but
Me too. Me too.
me first. But no, in all seriousness, I'll also add that I want to echo what Mark said about the rarity of events like this, and I'm not referring to this conference. I mean a moment where these technologies come together in a moment that new things become possible. And I feel incredibly privileged to be a part of that. But what I'm really looking forward to is that even up here on stage, you see these very disparate applications. I mean, you have medicine, you have architecture and space exploration, but really so many similarities as well. And so part of what's wonderful about development and about the things that we build is that there are far more similarities once you get 1 inch below sort of the domain, then there are differences. And I'm looking forward to benefiting from all of that as a larger community engages. It's going to be great.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us. I believe Jeff and Mark are available to stick around outside for questions. Megan has to take off and catch a plane that she's already late for, and Aviat has a meeting. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Have a great one.